Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are reacting to World War One by Oversimplified. I reacted to the World War Two, the sequel of World War One, a couple maybe like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I don't really know. And then I reacted to Cold War very recently. Both of these original videos are both going to be in the description, so you can go watch them by yourself, or you can stick around and watch me watch it, and then go watch them, or watch these first, and then watch me, or maybe you haven't already seen it. I don't know, just the list goes on and what you can do. So let's just get right into it. Like, if you enjoy and want me to react more of these oversimplified videos, because I think they're fun to react to. I don't know about you, but I think it's because I'm really into like history, geography, and stuff like that. So let's just watch this.
The world of 1914, a time of modern technology, culture, and fashion. Truly the height of civilization. Let's have a war. Everyone knew a big war was coming. France wanted some stuff back that Germany had taken from it. Germany wanted to take more of everyone's stuff, and they were building a big sexy navy that was making the British uncomfortable. These two empires thought they were really cool, but lots of different people who lived there didn't think it was so cool. And some of them had even been declaring independence with help from Russia. Everyone was talking about each other behind each other's backs. Throw in the fact that military technology had come a long way since the last major war, and suddenly everyone was pretty eager to beat each other up. In this area of Austria-Hungary lived some Serbs and Bosnians who hated living in Austria-Hungary. So the Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand goes there for a nice drive in an open-top car with his car's route published in advance. And that went just about as well as you'd expect. Some assassins were waiting for him along the way and threw bombs at his car, but they missed and blew up some officers behind him instead. So the Archduke goes into hiding, leaves Sarajevo, and the whole war never happened. Except no, the Archduke doesn't leave, but instead goes back out in the open-top car to visit the injured officers in hospital. The driver takes a wrong turn and by sheer coincidence gets stuck beside one of the failed assassins, who shoots him. Austria-Hungary is understandably pissed about all this, and they think the Serbian government had something to do with it, which they might have. So they go to their ally Germany and say, hey Germany, we're going to declare war on Serbia, and Germany is all for that. So Austria-Hungary send a big list of impossible demands to Serbia, and when Serbia refuses, they declare war. Austria-Hungary and Germany are friends, and Serbia is protected by Russia, who's friends with France, so they all declare war on each other. Montenegro joins in too. France and Britain also have a kind of alliance, so when France says, hey Britain, you got my back, Britain is like, Maybe. And then they decide to stay out of it, which is great for Germany because Germany has a plan. They know that Russia is so big and clumsy that it will take them a while to get ready for war. So with this guy in charge, Germany will send all its troops into France at lightning speed while Russia's getting ready, defeat France, then move all the troops to Russia and defeat Russia, and then we all speak German and eat Pfefferpottast every day. Just one problem. France has loads of forts and defenses along its German border, and Germany can't waste any time fighting them, so Germany decides to go around them, through Belgium.
Alright, here we go, our first invasion.
Belgium is neutral, but Germany wants to march 750,000 troops through it to get around France's defenses. They're hoping Belgium will just kind of sit down and shut up, but they don't. They fight back. And they're pretty good too, so they slow the Germans down. What's worse is that Britain shows up, and they're pretty pissed that Germany's invading neutral countries. So now Britain declares war on Germany. So Germany push on through Belgium and commit some atrocities along the way. They also wear spikes and sometimes skulls on the uniform. So if you're trying to not look like the bad guys, good job. The Allies have a propaganda extravaganza, and this starts having an influence around the world, notably in America. The US President Woodrow Wilson sees himself as a bit of a Jesus figure and spends most of the war trying to get everyone to just hug it out. But there's also a large population of ethnic Germans living in the United States, and when the war first broke out, they were like, yay, Germany. But now that they're committing atrocities in Belgium, they're less enthusiastic. Let's play Spot the French Soldier. Did you see him? Easy, right? He's wearing a bright blue uniform with red trousers. And do you know who else spotted him easily too? The Germans. So when the French were slowly marching in columns through the countryside, the Germans easily tore them to shreds with their giant guns. All the nations involved in this war went in with an old-school war mentality, and all of them had to update their uniforms and tactics a lot during the Great War. because this war was going to be like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Russia's ready for war, and way earlier than expected. Hey, Austria-Hungary, can you get on top of that? Oh yeah, sure, we've got this. Nope. So Germany has to send some troops back to the east to defend against the Russians. The chief of staff of the Austro-Hungarian army is this guy, and although he is handsome, he turns out not to be the best military strategist. Austria-Hungary constantly ignores Germany's advice, and then comes
How
running
about
back to
I
Germany whenever they
don't?
get in trouble. Austria-Hungary even gets its ass kicked by tiny Serbia, who repels all their invasion attempts at the start of the war. It's better news for Germany in the north, though, where they almost completely wipe out the Russian Second Army. Back on the Western Front, the Germans continue advancing and are in sight of Paris. At this point, anyone would be forgiven for
Once
thinking
they take
Germans
the
were going to
capital,
get
that's
quick
it.
victory after all. But then things start to go wrong. The French commander-in-chief knew something had to be done, and he ordered his armies to stop retreating. In the resulting battle, a gap opened up in the German lines. If a gap opens up, the enemy can use it to flank you from the side and behind, so the German armies have to retreat. The Allies launch a counterattack, so the Germans dig into defensive positions. The Allies do the same. Then both sides move north, trying to outflank each other along the way. When they reach the sea, they're in a stalemate with trench systems running the whole way from the coast to Switzerland, the beginning of trench warfare on the Western Front. Here's how trench warfare works. Two opposing lines of trenches with no man's land in between. One side would pummel the other with hundreds of thousands of artillery shells, sometimes for days at a time. This had a huge psychological effect on the soldiers, leaving many shell-shocked. Then, the attacking troops would leave their trenches and rush across no man's land, a muddy wet mass of shell craters and barbed wire. The defending trench would unleash machine gun fire on the attackers, inflicting thousands of casualties. The attackers would send wave after wave until either they gave up or the opposing trench was finally overrun. There would be months of fighting and the deaths of thousands in order to gain a few meters or kilometers of land. Living in the trenches was hard work too.
You gotta know it
Corpses,
moved.
mud that could swallow you whole, pools of poisonous water, rats, disease, the smell. It's insane that millions of soldiers put up with these conditions, and commanders ordered them to do so for years.
Yeah. Really? Part 2 already? Wow, these are short videos, alright.
The Volkswagen Tiguan has a lower maintenance.
Ay, ay, ay.
With
Okay,
both
part
sides stuck in
2.
a hard stalemate, they knew this war wasn't going to be about taking territory, but about simply wearing each other down.
Yeah.
The Allies had plenty of men to expend from its overseas dominions, and the British also started a naval blockade, so Germany couldn't import stuff, like food. Neither side really wanted a long, grueling war, though, so they both thought of ways to break the deadlock on the Western Front. Idea number 1, new frontiers. When the war first broke out, Australia was quick to take German New Guinea. The Allies also quickly jumped on Germany's colonies in Africa, and particularly in German East Africa, locals were enlisted as soldiers and carriers by both sides, leading to a tragic loss of life for the native Africans. Some new combatants entered the war as well. The Allies' new friends were Italy and Japan. Japan was busy building itself an empire, so it was more than happy to take away German islands and colonies in East Asia. Italy actually had an alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary before the war, but after some tense relations, and then the Allies promising to give them some of Austria-Hungary's stuff, they switched sides. Italy opened up a front in the mountains here, but like everyone else, they were stuck in stalemate for most of the war. The Central Powers' new friend was a struggling empire in the Middle East.
The Ottomans.
The Ottoman were divided on
Hold on. I didn't know the Ottomans lasted this long. Like, I knew, like, their empire started, like, way back. And they're still here at 19, what is it, like 15, 16? Wow, I didn't know that. Huh.
to actually join the war or not, since they had been exhausted by the recent Balkan Wars. Some of the politicians who did want to join went off on their own and fired some shells at Russia. And then came back and said, whoops, looks like we're at war now.
Whoops, sorry,
The Ottoman
didn't mean to
entry into the war
attack
was of
someone
particular
and then
concern to the
start a
British,
war.
since the Middle East was full of oil, and Britain wanted all of that oil. First, the Ottomans tried to attack Russia in the Caucasus Mountains, but they weren't prepared for the cold, and many of them froze to death. Then they crossed miles of desert to take the Suez Canal from the British, but that failed too. Then the Allies tried to take the Dardanelles at Gallipoli in a long and hard trench warfare campaign, but that also failed. The Ottomans blamed their initial losses on the ethnic Armenians living within Ottoman territory.
Why?
The resulting Armenian genocide led to the
What?
deaths of 1.5 million people. Then the Germans sent spies into Afghanistan.
You're
to
just
try to
blaming
convince the
people
Arab
for no
tribes there to rise
reason.
up in jihad against the British and attack India. But that plan failed, partly because the spies got bored, brewed their own alcohol, and got drunk, which is a bad thing to do in Afghanistan.
Oh,
All these new
Oh, they're
frontiers
mad.
hadn't done much to change the war. Aware that the Allies had more men and supplies than them, the Germans knew they had to do something to break the stalemate. Before the war, there was a big conference that set out the rules of modern warfare. No chemical weapons, no killing civilians. Basically, don't be jerks. The Germans held a meeting and decided to be jerks. Zeppelin air raids commenced
course.
over British cities. They also started attacking the Allied trenches with chlorine gas, and they used submarines to sink civilian ships. One such civilian ship was the Lusitania.
Oh, the
which had
Lusitania.
59 Americans on board when it was sunk.
Oh,
Further swaying U.S. opinion against the
that's
Germans.
their big mess up
With the
because they
completely unfair to
messed
Germans,
with
the Allies
the
also engaged in
Americans.
chemical warfare soon after, and they had been hiding anti-submarine weapons on their civilian ships, which let the Germans justify their attacks. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary still hadn't dealt with Serbia, so the Central Powers enlisted some help. Bulgaria wished it was bigger. and was still bitter
Bulgaria.
about losing the Second
Oh,
Balkan
come
War. The Central
on.
Powers promised to make all of Bulgaria
Come
well
on,
defeated countries they helped,
Bulgaria.
so they signed on, and together they knocked out Serbia. The Serbian troops retreated through Albania, which was neutral but had some ties to Austria-Hungary.
Why you have to
Austria-Hungary
go
entered
through
Albania
neutral
in a friendly
countries?
invasion to chase down the Serbians. Many of them
Hey,
escaped.
buddy.
It's 1916,
Wait,
and a lot
wait.
is happening.
Where is it? Oh, wrong one.
Many of whom escaped by sea. They entered Albania in a friendly invasion to
Hey, buddy. Look how tiny he is.
chase down the Serbians.
Oh,
Many of whom escaped by sea. It's 1916, and a lot is happening.
yeah,
As if they
probably.
didn't have enough enemies already, Germany added one more to the list. Portugal had been getting a bit chummy with the Allies behind
Portugal?
the scenes, and Germany didn't like that one
I
bit.
didn't know that.
Around the same time, the only sea battle of the war happened. Both sides had a
Oh,
new
the
powerful
dreadnoughts.
class of
I know
battleships
this.
called dreadnoughts, but they were so expensive
I know
to build
this.
that neither side wanted to risk losing them in a battle, so they kept them in port, except for one time when they had a big fight and a bunch
Yep,
of them got
Battle of
damaged, so
Jutland.
they didn't try that again. The UK started conscripting men to the army, so they had plenty of reserves, which is just as well because the Western Front was about to get brutal. The longest
Ugh.
and one of the bloodiest battles of the war started when the Germans launched an attack around the French city of Verdun. The French defended it desperately, leading to hundreds of thousands of casualties. Under pressure, the French called on its allies to do something to draw the Germans' attention away, so the British started their own long and brutal fight, the Battle of the Somme, with 60,000 British casualties on just the first day. It was also here that the British first used one crazy
Tanks.
of sci-fi technology. The Russians had been getting pushed back
Tanks.
further and further into their own territory, but in response to the French call for help, they began a huge offensive, and did really well until they ran out of supplies and got stuck. Seeing how well the Russians had been doing, Romania decided now would be a great time to jump in and win the war, and then they got pounded. The
Yeah.
Greeks were fighting amongst themselves about whether to join the war or not. The king liked the Central Powers, while the Prime Minister wanted to join the Allies. After a brief national schism, during which the country split into two, the king finally
National
abdicated
schism.
and the country reunited. With Allied help, they began a new offensive. In the Middle East, Russia was pushing into Ottoman territory from the north. The British had also made a landing in Mesopotamia to protect Persia's oil fields, and they had also sent a small army up the Tigris River to try to take Baghdad. But the army got sieged in the town of Kut along the way, and eventually surrendered. A new offensive was launched from the south.
Why would they try to
all
take
out desert
Baghdad?
warfare.
Is that
The offensive
because it was
led
the
by one
capital or
famous
something?
British officer,
I'm
better
actually
known as
confused
Lawrence of
about that.
Arabia, who helped lead the Arab tribes in a revolt that wreaked havoc on the Ottoman supply lines. By the time 1917 rolled around, everyone was exhausted. There were mutinies in the French army, the German populace was starving, and the war had drained all of Russia's supplies. There was no clear winner, and it was still anyone's war. The only question now was, who was going to break first?
Oh. You know what? I'm going to take a guess. Judging by the... Was it the Cold War? I think it was like in the part 1 of the Cold War. They talked about how Russia, when World War I started, Russia got pulled out of the war because of Lenin. Because he took over, made the country communist, and pulled them out of the war. So I'm guessing in Russia.
And the answer was Russia.
Yep,
Tired of
I
not
knew it.
fighting, and mad that a crazy magic homeless guy was calling someone
And the
his
Russian
there was an uprising
Revolution,
in
I know
Petrograd,
that.
complete with riots and strikes.
Yep,
The
Russian
riots turned into a
Revolution.
full-scale revolution, and a new government overthrew the Tsar. Then a few months later, the Bolsheviks overthrew the new government. and they pulled
communism.
Russia out of the war. This
Yep,
was great
I
news
knew
for
that.
Germany, who now only had to focus on the Western Front. But there was still one problem. The pesky United States of America was looking increasingly like it was going to join the war.
Of course.
America had been selling supplies to the Allies throughout the war and was getting super rich off the back of it, meaning it was in fantastic shape and was dangerous to the Germans. So Germany sent a telegram to Mexico saying, "Wouldn't it be crazy cool if you guys attacked America?" But the British intercepted.
Oh, I never knew that this was from World War One. I knew that Germany passed like a message to Mexico, but I didn't know it was in World War One because I saw this meme where it was like a classroom, and Germany passed a note to the United States. It said, "Hey, can you give this to Mexico?" And then, but the U.S. opened the letter, and it was like a hate message against the U.S. and just the U.S. looked at Germany funny. It was super hilarious. That's the only reason why I know this.
That was the final straw. American troops began shipping out to Europe. This was terrible news for Germany, and they knew their only hope now was to force France and the UK to surrender before the fresh American troops arrived. It was now or never, so they started one final attack. They converged their troops and hit hard at the Somme and pushed the Allies back. They hit a second time further north, then again and again.
Again and again and again and again.
Spending more and more resources, while the Allies were getting better and better at repelling their attacks. By the fifth punch, the Allies held the line and even pushed back.
Ooh.
With American troops now arriving in larger numbers.
Oh, that's it. That's it. That's it.
That was it. The Central Powers were being pushed back on all fronts.
Oh.
Bulgaria collapsed first, followed by the Ottoman Empire, then Austria-Hungary, and finally on November 11th, 1918, at 11 o'clock, Germany surrendered. At the peace
There it
treaty,
is.
Germany was forced to reduce its military, accept war guilt, and pay the bill for the
Oh,
war.
we know
After
this.
indescribable suffering.
Oh, we know this, don't we? From the World War II video, we know this. How much Hitler hated the Treaty of Versailles, and how they had to pay money, had to only reduce their army by 100,000 men, couldn't have an air force. And after the war, they lost territory, had to demilitarize the Rhineland. Ugh.
And millions dead. The world learnt its lesson and never had such an awful war again.
Never again.
For about 20 years.
Ah. Oh, that was good. Wow, that was good. I had it on a cue if you didn't notice. But I guess I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. Wow, that was good. Okay. Well, I didn't know that Mexico-Germany thing was in World War One. I didn't know that. Wow, that's why you should go watch these videos, because they're really cool if you're into geography and history. But anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I sure did. You should go definitely check out Oversimplified. Subscribe to him. And I'll see you guys next upload. Bye. Like if you enjoyed. Bye. Subscribe. Bye-bye.